Well, welcome back, guys, to Discovering Your Creative Genius with yours truly, Kristine Alicia. I'm truly excited to have partnered with the City of Miramar to be a part of giving our community creative solutions and our youth and our young people, giving some structured lessons on how we can influence this world with the creativity that's deep down inside. I have a passion, as you know, for singing and songwriting, and I enjoy teaching young people, especially high schoolers and middle schoolers, about melodies, songwriting, singing, instruments as well. I'm a teacher at school and I did some training at University of Miami. But today's all about us putting what we learned in the last two lessons. I hope you can go back to those two videos if you have not yet. Gotten some tips about songwriting from those videos, because this video is called Rhyming Schemes, Practical Rules Within Creativity. So it should be fun. It should be fun. So yes, a lot of artists, and I understand, we do not like rules. That's kind of why we are artists. We think on a different level. We count in a different way. We see the world in different colors. We even talk differently from our peers. We see colors, we write in colors, and this is what makes us different. This is what makes us unique. In fact, I like to say this. This is what makes us great artists. Artists always stand out because we are able to speak to the world. We are able to touch the world with metaphors and words that grab the emotion. We're gonna zone in on that today because that's what creative writing is about. It is about taking words and grabbing the attention of our audience, taking words and grabbing the emotion of our audience, taking words and telling a beautiful story. What makes us different from a movie or, sometimes an instructional book is that we are telling a story in different ways. We are giving color, we have rhythm, we have stanzas, we have rhymes, and we have what some people call a melodic structure to grab the attention of our audience. And the way we do this is, we're going to talk about different ways that we do this, and some of that is by repetition, by rhythm, by stanzas, by formulas. And this is what we're going to touch a little bit on today. When you, of course, get the rules and the foundation for this, we are able to take the rules. We don't have to stick by them. But when we have the rules, we can take these rules and make successful, memorable songs or poems or books. Once we grab the attention of our audience and once we connect with them, once the song or the book or the poem sticks to our audience and they are repeating what you have written, you know you've made an impact. And that is what I believe all of us creatives want to do. We want to make an impact in this world with our art, with what's inside. But there is a certain way to do it. There is a structure. So let's dive into it some more. So you may have heard this creative motto before, that rules are meant to be broken, but you cannot break the rules if you don't know them. It's like this. There is a menu to make this awesome recipe, but we know that great chefs don't really follow the recipe, but they had to go to cooking school or they had to go to culinary art school to learn the recipes, and from the recipes they indulge themselves with their own creativity and they began to create their own masterpieces from the recipes they learned in school. So it's the same thing here. I just wanted today lay out a few foundational rules for songwriting, and also which can overlap into other writing like poems and books and creative structures and sonnets, that kind of is a basic rule that goes all across the board. So this is for all creatives. I'm a songwriter, but this is not just for songwriting. These are basic foundational rules that have proven to be successful for all creatives and capturing our listening ears. For example, there is the rule in songwriting, I'm pretty sure a lot of you know, if you listen to your song, you notice there's a pattern. You don't have to be a musician or a musical genius or someone who studies music or even a creative that's watching this for a lesson today. You don't have to be that person that can recognize a pattern in a song. When you hear a song, you notice what? There's an intro, there's a verse, there's a chorus, it goes back to a second verse, then a chorus again, and then sometimes a bridge. More importantly, what else do we recognize about a song? There's a specific part of a song that most people can sing. And usually that's what makes a hit song. A song that a lot of people remember, a song that's catchy, and a song that most people can actually sing along with. That's for a song, but what is the foundation that sits behind that formula to make it successful? It is called repetition, and the repetition of certain things that make this song a beautiful, and what I call a beautiful sonnet or a song or poem. A song is just a poem in a melodic structure, right? That has touched the heart of someone. So repetition and familiarity, it is proven that that's what's gonna capture your audience. Because once you have repetition and familiarity, of course, you capture the attention of your audience. But once your audience is familiar with what you're saying or a phrase or a particular word and they feel comfortable with it, they are most likely going to repeat it, right? And of course, it has to be repetitive so that they can remember it. And the minute they can repeat it and they feel one with it, you've already connected with your audience. And isn't that the number one goal of writing your creative piece? So, of course, without a doubt, repetition and familiarity has to be the foundation for laying down any of your masterpieces, whether it's a poem, a sonnet, whether it's a song, whether it's a creative work that you want people to hear your story and that you want people to hear your heart, or you have a thesis, or you have an agenda that you are trying to get the attention of the world. This is our cry. This is usually the cry of the creatives. We have something that's so much on our heart and we're so passionate to get it out there. But we have to think structurally and we have to think creatively and we have to think smart to get into the hearts of those individuals that we're trying to reach. We cannot just say, oh, well, I want to just say whatever I want to say and they better hear it. No, let's follow the formula. And the basic formula is making sure what you're writing has repetition and it has familiarity. So how do we do that? Let's look at the example again in songwriting. So in songwriting, we have a verse and we have a chorus, and then we have the verse again, and then we have a chorus. And later on in the video, we're going to go more in depth about how to even break down the verses and how to break down the chorus. So let's look at the definition of a verse and let's look at the definition of a chorus. So when we're writing a song, for example, we're telling a story. So in a story, there's a beginning and it leads up to an end, but there is a resolution that you're trying to tell. You're trying to bring your thoughts and bring your audience along with you along this story. So of course, in a song, there's an intro, all right, and that's usually very flexible. And then the first verse tells a story, all right, and that first verse has some detail, and then it leads up into the chorus, which of course the chorus gives the theme of what you're trying to say, the theme of your story. It usually has some resolve, and the chorus has to be catchy, the chorus has to be repetitive, and the chorus has to give the theme of what you're trying to say. All right, and then traditionally go into the second verse, and the second verse gives more detail to the story of what you were saying in the first verse. And that's the traditional approach to songwriting. And then of course you go back to the chorus again, which brings the repetition so that the audience can again get the point and you're reiterating what you're saying. And then there's the bridge. What is the bridge? The bridge is usually a twist or a second perspective or a different eye onto what you've been trying to say the entire song. And it could be a repetitive line. You could be speaking from a different voice. Let's say you're speaking in third person, and then in the bridge you want to speak in first person, or vice versa. Or the bridge just has another take melodically to exactly what you've been trying to say in the chorus. So that's a traditional structure in writing a song. Well, let's talk about the importance of words in a song. A lot of us creatives, we know that we're not just writing a book. We're not just writing an article. We are actually writing something with a rhythm and structure, something that sounds good on the tongue, something that flows, something that captures the heart. This is something that we've connected together and woven together with the imagery in our minds, and now we're trying to put it into words. So let's talk about how we do that. Well, when we create words in a song or in a poem, there is absolutely a rhyming structure. There's actually a rhythm structure that is often followed. And we're going to talk about that structure right now as we go into stanzas. But before we do that, we have to talk about rhymes. Rhymes is the common piece in any kind of creative writing, whether we're doing a song or a poem, that gives us balance and creative structure and stanzas, and gives us actually resolve and placement, and gives a nice flow for the person that's reading it, and sonically gives us rhythm. So this is where you, the songwriter, has an advantage. If you can properly structure your lyric writing with its own rhythm by sonically putting down the rhymes and the stanzas properly in line, you have already put yourself ahead, and you're actually putting yourself in the control seat of making such a beautiful piece and putting the rhythm right there in the pocket of your song. So this first exercise, I would say let's do this. Why don't you practice every single day? Be friends with your thesaurus. Practice rhyming off the top of your head. I would say start with small words and then try and get with more complicated words. Don't be afraid to open up to the thesaurus. So let's talk about rhyming, because rhyming actually is, like I said, it's a common piece in both poems and in songs. In fact, songs are just simply poems put in a melodic structure. So I want to talk about obvious rhymes right now, because that is the easiest place to start. All right, we talk about cat, bat, hat, mat, but of course some of you are already experienced writers, and we don't end every phrase with those kind of words, but we have to first look at the basic rules. So I want to identify between obvious rhymes and non-obvious rhymes, and then we see how we use that to create color in our creative pieces. So we're looking at obvious rhymes. So let me give you an example. This example is by a famous writer in the 1700s called William Blake. And this poem, I'm just going to read a small part of it. And it was called The Tiger. Not to be confused with the Eye of the Tiger song. So here's a poem, and it goes like this. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? So obvious. I just read two stanzas. The first stanza had 4 lines, and the second stanza had 4 lines. The obvious rhymes were bright and night. I didn't go with symmetry, but we had bright and night. And what were the others that we heard? Skies and eyes. And then there was aspire and fire. So that is a famous poem, and he played with obvious rhymes. Now that is something that you can do today, and you can start off practicing with your obvious rhymes. And there you have one kind of palette to play with for writing your poems or your songs. It never gets old, obvious rhymes. So if we're talking about the opposite of obvious rhymes, then of course non-obvious rhymes would be imperfect rhymes. So they're perfect rhymes, which it sounds exactly the same, like sad and bad, and well, sad and bad would be a perfect rhyme, but an imperfect rhyme would be sad and cat, because it's similar, but it doesn't end the same. It doesn't have the same ending at all. So let me give an example of a famous poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and it's called How Do I Love Thee? And it goes like this. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight, for the ends of being an ideal of grace. So the order, of course, ways and grace is an imperfect rhyme. It definitely is not an obvious rhyme, but the way how it falls off the tongue makes it rhyme. And someone argued that a well-written song should not have obvious rhymes. It should have imperfect rhymes, which makes it a little bit more creative. Again, I don't think there's any hard, fast rule. I believe that you can take obvious rhymes and imperfect rhymes, and you can be as creative as you want it. And again, it actually depends on a couple other things that we're going to talk about soon in the video. So right now, what I want you to do is practice your rhymes. Do a bunch of obvious rhymes and then do a bunch of imperfect rhymes and see how it falls off the tongue. And then ask yourselves, what are some of your favorite songs? And then look for the rhymes, look for the words that rhyme in those songs, and then now decipher whether they're imperfect rhymes or perfect rhymes, whether they're non-obvious rhymes and whether they're obvious rhymes, and take some time to see which ones connect best with you. Which songs are your favorite, and identify what kind of rhymes they have. That would be interesting to see. So while you did that, I took some thought and thought about some songs that actually captured my attention. And I found some examples. One of my favorite songs, Lauryn Hill, Killing Me Softly. Actually, Killing Me Softly is a remake by Lauryn Hill, done by Roberta Flack and so many others. And this song has perfect rhyme. So I wanted to sing this part. The verse actually has perfect rhyme, and I want to point this out to you. I hope you guys know this song. It's called, I heard he sang a good song. I heard he had a style. And so I came to see him and listen for a while. And there he was, this young boy, stranger to my eyes. So we hear the structure, the melodic structure of that verse in particular. But let's hear the verse, let's hear the words at the end of each phrase. Perfect rhyme, style, while, and eyes. Such a great example of perfect rhyme. But then there's this other song, and I know most of you probably know her, Lizzo. Well, I hope you do. I'm not so sure if I can sing her song because she actually is half rapping, and I'm not a rapper. But this is an example of how imperfect rhyme is used a lot in hip hop and modern songs. So, why are men great till they gotta be great? Don't text me, tell it straight to my face. Best friend sat me down in the salon chair. Shampoo press gets you out of my hair. Fresh photos with the bomb lighting. New man on the Minnesota Vikings. Truth hurts needed something more exciting. Bomb de bomb bomb ba bomb de bass. Again, I'm not an expert at that, but here I hope you know this song and you could have identified the imperfect rhyme. So great and face rhyme, but it's not perfect. Chair and hair is a perfect rhyme, but then she has lighting and Vikings, and then she has exciting, and then she ends the whole stanza with babe. Imperfect rhyming, but quite genius. And this, of course, you guys know was a hit song, and I believe it won a Grammy. I'm not so sure, but hey, what a perfect example, and that we can also follow along. I wish I could hear what your examples were and what you identified from some of your favorite songs. Okay, so now that you've gotten some practice with rhyming words and the obvious rhyme and the imperfect rhymes, how are we going to place it actually and formulate it and position it into your song or your creative piece? So I would say, simple way, this is an easy way to start off. You want to put your phrases in pairs. So for example, if you're writing a song and you have an 8-bar song, you're going to have 4 lines. So you have line 1, line 2, line 3, and line 4. So if you have line 1 and line 2 and 3 and 4, we know that 1 and 2, they're going to have your rhymes there at the end of 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 is paired with another set of rhymes. Simple structure. So that's one way to formulate your stanza with pairs and to have the rhythm of your rhymes falling properly and then connecting with your audience. So if you have a flow of your rhymes in pairs, the audience or your listeners like, oh, that's what's going to happen next. And so then that's where your familiarity connects, right? So an example of that would be like this. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. So there you heard, right, with your own ears, not even looking at this. I'm not sure if you're looking at the poem, but you could hear the line 1 and line 2, line 3 and line 4, and you could actually hear the pairs with day and may, or temperate and date, or shines and declines, or dimmed and untrimmed. And that gave the poem rhythm without any music. So that's an example of pairing up your line structure and giving yourself a rhythm in your stanza. So I want to look at one more example of having rhymes and pairing your rhymes in your stanza. I want to look at one of my favorite writers in poetry, Maya Angelou, and she lived from 1928 to 2014. And she has left an incredible mark on this world. This one is called Still I Rise, and let's listen for the pairing of the rhymes and the phrasing in this poem. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. So a couple things to look at here. She has every stanza, she has 4 lines, like the rule I said about 4 lines. Then she has another 4 lines and another 4 lines. At the end of her first 4 lines, she has still I'll rise. Then she repeats still I'll rise at the end of the 8 lines. I think I had mentioned before that repetition is another key thing in writing. You have to have repetition for what? For it to sound sonically pleasing to the ears and for it to be memorable for your listening audience. So she says, still I rise, I'll rise. That is the theme that she's pushing into your ears for you to remember what she's saying, for you to get the point of what she's trying to push into your spirit and your heart, so that you will get her passion of the message she's trying to portray. Let's go back to the rhyming. She had lies and rise. Those 2 words rhymed in the first stanza, and then lies fell on the second, and lies fell on line 2, and rise fell on line 4. Now let's go to the second stanza where she had you and gloom. Is that an imperfect rhyme or a perfect rhyme? An imperfect rhyme. Oh, and then she rhymed gloom with room. And then she rhymed tides with high. So a couple things going on here. She had some perfect rhymes and imperfect rhymes. and then they fell in different places of the lines. So we're going to talk about that now and where to actually place your rhymes. Do your rhymes always have to fall at the end of the phrase? Not always, but now we're moving on from one phase to the second phase and getting a little bit more creative with where you can find the rhymes. Rhymes don't always have to fall at the end of the phrase. They can actually be put in between phrases and then play around with that. Writing is so much fun. So here's one more point I want to make about why it's important to pair up your lines and to understand that you have to have your lines in pairs so that you can know where to position your rhymes. Oh, I just rhymed. But if you have line 1 and line 2 and line 3 and line 4, you're creating symmetry. And line 1 kind of goes up and line 2 goes down and 3 and 4. And then you, of course, as the artist, you are creating tension and releasing tension and creating and releasing tension. And then this again adds to you putting emotion and creating a subconscious feel in your poem or your song. So very important. It's not just about writing lines or just writing a bunch of words on a paper. Remember now, because you're a creative writer and you're writing either a poem or a song, you are creating rhythm and creating a subconscious sonic feel to your words. That's what's making you different. That's what's making you a creative writer. So we're talking about rhyming schemes, and of course, again, I'm going to always say this as a creative. A rhyming scheme can go as infinite as how your imagination carries you. And it actually can transpire over generations and over time, and as you can even tell, over trends. So as we have seen, there are different styles that we see in songs, whether they're rap songs or classic songs or pop songs or reggae songs. There's always a certain kind of rhyming scheme, but they actually change and they come back and recycle over and over and over. I'm going to talk about some classic structures right now you actually see in every genre, right? And the first one actually is called half and full. So we talked about the lines. You have line 1, line 2, line 3, and 4, and we can pair the rhymes and put the rhyming words at the end of those lines. But there are also other ways we can have rhyming schemes. So let's say, for example, we're looking at one pair right now. We have line 1 and line 2. But in line 1, you can actually have a half structure where halfway through that line 1, there's a rhyming word. And at the end of line 1, you have another rhyming word, right? That matches with that first one. And then on line 2, a completely different word. Or you can have a full line in line 1 and then a half and a half in line 2, right? And then you can play around with the words in that way as well. I cannot stress this more than once, that once you have your basic formula and you do it in this structure that is classic, you as the creative can take it around and play around with it. So you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, you have your pairs, and you can now play around with it and be so creative and deal with your obvious rhymes and your non-obvious rhymes and your perfect rhymes and your imperfect rhymes. And you see a whole beautiful piece evolving out of one simple idea, one simple phrase. And this is something that I get actually so happy about, because when people say they have, they come up with songwriter's block, or they got this great inspiring idea, or they got this great inspiration, but can't get past the inspiration or the first 2 lines, is because honestly, I believe we've forgotten that there is a formula to follow, and this formula is just simple enough for you to take, and then that formula, if used properly, can be picked apart and moved around to create your own unique perspective on your inspirational experience. But that's one reason why I'm so glad we're talking about formulas and lines and structures today in today's class. I want to talk about now the kinds of rhymes that you're going to use to put into your phrases, okay? And so you have internal rhyme and external rhymes. The external rhymes, as it sounds like, would be at the external end or the end of your phrase. So if you have line 1, line 2, line 3, and 4, your rhymes would be at the end of those phrases. And some of the examples I mentioned earlier were clearly like that. Like in Maya Angelou's poem where she had lies and rise, those were external rhymes. All right. We can look at an example that have internal rhymes. So internal rhymes, those rhymes are in the middle of the phrases. But here's an example. In the song Don't Stop Believing, the couple of lines go like this. It says, a singer in a smoky room, the smell of wine and cheap perfume. Working hard to get my fill, everybody wants a thrill. Some will win, some will lose, some were born to sing the blues. So clearly you can see that example of where the internal rhymes, the rhymes aren't just at the end, you actually have them halfway. And then again, and that kind of went with something that we spoke about earlier with the half and full phrasing. And you see how it all comes together. Okay, so we just talked about internal rhymes and external rhymes, and that's another ploy to use for your rhyming scheme. Play with it. So here's a great example. This song is actually called Unaware, and it is written by one of my favorite artists. His name is Alan Stone. And I chose this song as an example because it has two things that we spoke about. It gives great example of rhyming in lines, line 1, line 2, line 3, and 4, and the structure of how it falls and gives rhythm, right? It gives a great example of how repetition makes a song great. So let's look at this first verse in Unaware. It has 4 lines, okay, in his first verse. And that's all he has in his first verse. And the first verse says, every day the deficit grows, you spend more than you own. Papa always said to me, keep a close eye on your authority. So we see grows and own, imperfect rhyme. And then he has me and authority, imperfect rhyme. But line 1 and line 2, they are pair. And then line 3 and line 4, they are also pair. Another thing to notice about that verse is that he's telling a story. Remember, I had said that in the verse traditionally and almost always, the verse it leads up to grabbing the attention of the audience, and then it's not until the chorus that you get the full theme or the point made for the song, okay, or the creative piece. And so let's go into the chorus for this song, Unaware. The chorus says, you say that you care, I was unaware. You say that you care, I was unaware. So it's just 2 simple lines. Well, it's 4 lines, but he repeats 2 lines twice. And so it's very simple, but the repetition again makes you, the listener, it grabs the attention of the listener, and also the listener can now sing along with it. Now listen to the song a little bit. I'm going to play it for you now, and you can decide for yourself how catchy that chorus is and if you get it. And then actually listen to the second verse as he leads you into the story of this beautiful song. Did you get the point of the song? And even though it was written, to me it was written with complexity, but it was such a simple and great song. And you can actually leave the song singing it. So of course one would refer to thesaurus to find their rhymes. It's an easy way, or some people would cheat, and actually a lot of songwriters go to the thesaurus to find their rhymes. But you don't actually have to always rely on a thesaurus. There is another way that you can be creative with putting imperfect rhymes together or placing them in your masterpiece. So the way that you can do that is being creative with accents. And I'm not meaning like accents as if I'm from Jamaica or from England. I mean accents on where you put the emphasis on the word. So on certain words, you can actually create a rhyme depending on where you put the accent. The way you sing it is often the feel that you give. And even though in music there's already a rhythm and a pattern created by the percussion or the production, but if you want to give your song a certain feel, you definitely have to pay attention to the accents. So I wrote a song called Black Diamond, and it goes like this. I made sure to put certain emphasis on certain words so that the rhyming would feel a certain way. So the song Black Diamond goes like this. So you feeling a little pressure, heat up, turn up, wada wada. What you mean this is a depression? Turn it round and it's just compression. So do you see how the first two lines, pressure and wada wada, I specifically had to place accents on the certain syllables for it to flow phonetically. And then depression and compression, I place the accents differently for a certain feel. So I had depression and then compression. So that's an example of making or playing around creatively with the accents in the songs of the rhyming schemes. So another point I want to really stress, and this is not something that I think is foreign to most creatives and people like you and myself, is that when we are writing, our intention is to evoke emotion, right? And the way we do that is by, of course, giving our experience, telling our true story, but using our words in a creative way that paint a picture, right? And so we're not just writing words down in a boring way. For example, we're not saying the sky is blue or the sun is yellow. We are actually creating an image with our words, and you and I know that the best writers do that. Our favorite writers in songs do that. Instead of saying I'm feeling sad, for example, they're gonna say, oh, the night fell on my heart. Okay, so these are things that you have to also incorporate while you're thinking about your phrasing and your lines and the structure of your stanzas, because when you're painting your picture, you want to make sure that you're plugging in your metaphors in cohesion with your rhymes. So an excellent songwriter is John Mayer, and I think what I would consider one of his best songs is Gravity. He uses his words to evoke such emotion right then and there and instantaneously for the listener. So let's take a look at Gravity. It says in his first verse, so gravity is working against me and gravity wants to bring me down. Oh, I'll never known what makes this man with all the love that his heart can stand. Dream of ways to throw it all away. So he actually has broken the rule a little bit. He has 5 lines in his first stanza, but he does have it in pairs. He has me and down, and then man and stand, and then we only see an imperfect rhyme. But the reason why I'm using this example is because he's using words and painting a picture of depression. All right, let's take a second look. Let's take a look at his second verse. So he says, whoa, gravity is working against me and gravity wants to bring me down. So what do we see again? Repetition. So we didn't see perfect rhyme in the first stanza, but we see how line 1 and line 2, he took line 1 and line 2 and repeated it into the second stanza, following the rule of repetition. Right? So again, rhyming and repetition go hand in hand, and doesn't have to be in every single stanza. So we're back into the second verse, and he says, whoa, gravity is working against me and gravity wants to bring me down. Oh, twice as much ain't twice as good and can't sustain like one half could. It's wanting more that's gonna say, it's wanting more that's gonna send me to my knees. So again, we have a few rhymes here at the end of the phrasing. I see good and could. So he does repetition in line 1 and 2, and in line 3 and 4 he has perfect rhyme at the end. Yes. And then of course on the 5th line he breaks through and just has knees. And then if you go to the next stanza, he repeats, oh, twice as much ain't as good and can't sustain like one half could. So if you were the listener, the things that would stick out in your memory are those 2 lines. Oh, twice as much ain't twice as good and can't sustain like one half could. And guess what the name of the song is called? Gravity. Perfect. Actually almost imperfect, but clever writing. And what is the most important thing that you get from this song is an emotion that his whole world is crumbling and his heart is in depression. Tip in writing. So my dear fellow creatives, my wonderful fellow comrades in this creative world, we talked about a couple of things. We talked about rhyming structures, we talked about rhymes themselves, we talked about perfect rhymes and imperfect rhymes, we talked about half and full phrasing, we talked about being mystical or putting metaphors or giving imagery in your songwriting. We talked about how those songs flow in rhythm for you to get the feel. We talked about connecting with your audience and why repetition is important. But again, I cannot stress, most importantly, it has to come from inside of you. It has to come from what you feel and from where you feel inspired. Do not negate that first initial feeling of inspiration. Even if it takes a little while to bud, hold on to that first feeling of inspiration and then apply these rules. That is your first seed, so don't ignore it. But play around with these rules. And the one thing I definitely want to say, apart from just practicing your rhymes randomly, actually you have to take practice a lot with the structures now. So apart from just going around there and saying, okay, bat, cat, sat, hat, now you're going to practice writing full poems, a stanza here or 2 stanzas here, and then practice your formulas. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4 with all perfect rhymes at the end? Practice with external rhymes and internal rhymes, or mix up those stanzas with internal rhymes and external rhymes, right? The more you practice, the better you get. And then the more you do it, the more you want to play around with it. And the more you do it, the more creative your songs are. The most important thing that I want to leave with you today is that you also remember you are trying to relay your message. And the way to do that first is to evoke emotion, right? Use your words to evoke emotion, to paint a picture, to paint an image, and connect with your audience. And the way to do that is to take the basic foundation, the basic formula, the basic recipe, and like a chef, make your own masterpiece and your gourmet meal for your audience to taste the wonderful spice that you have created from these simple formulas that we learned today. I hope you guys were able to take the tips that we spoke about today and definitely take these formulas and practice and practice and practice. And hopefully one day I will get to hear a wonderful poem or a song that has gone into the world and affected so many ears. So I look forward to our final class and our last lesson with discovering your creative genius with myself, Kristine Alicia. And in the next video, it's going to be a lot of fun because we're going to be talking about exploring traditional and non-traditional structures in our writing world. So much fun. All right, see you guys soon. Bye.